Welcome, you're watching Global Lens on News 9 Live with me, Neha Khanna. As usual, we have a packed show for you. The top stories from around the globe over the next 1 hour. And our top focus on the show today is once again on Pakistan. Did the United States pressure Pakistan to oust Imran Khan from the Prime Minister's office in 2022? Well, that is what a new report says, quoting a secret and classified diplomatic cable obtained from a Pakistani military source. American news portal The Intercept has reported this story, essentially saying that Imran Khan paid this price for his neutrality over the Russia-Ukraine war. The diplomatic cable cites a meeting between the US State Department officials and Pakistan's ambassador to the US on 7th March 2022. Where Khan's stance on the Russian invasion was discussed. This diplomatic meeting occurred 2 weeks after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, when Khan was in fact present at the Kremlin in Moscow, and his visit infuriated Washington. As per the cable, known internally as a cipher, US Assistant Secretary of State for the Bureau of South and Central Asian Affairs, Donald Lu, told his Pakistani counterpart, people here and in Europe are quite concerned about why Pakistan is taking such an aggressively neutral position on Ukraine. When Ambassador Asad Majid Khan tried to clarify Pakistan's position on Ukraine, Lu retorted, saying it was the Prime Minister's behavior that was problematic, and added if the no confidence vote against Prime Minister Khan succeeds, all will be forgiven in Washington, because the Russia visit is being looked at as a decision by the Prime Minister. Otherwise, I think it will be tough going ahead. That is what Lu said in what may sound like a threat. He added, Europe will follow the US lead in the isolation of Prime Minister Khan. All this is mentioned in the diplomatic cable as per the news story, which goes on to state that this discussion concluded with the Pakistani ambassador expressing hope that the issue of the Russia-Ukraine war would not impact bilateral ties between Pakistan and the United States, at which point Lu reportedly told him that the damage was not real, but but not fatal, and with Khan gone, the relationship could go back to normal. Donald Lu said, and I quote, I would argue that it has already created a dent in the relationship from our perspective. And here's what is interesting. Just 2 days before this particular meeting, held on the 2nd of March 2022, Lu was summoned to a Senate Foreign Relations Committee hearing to discuss the neutrality of India, Sri Lanka and Pakistan on the Russia-Ukraine conflict. When Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen asked Lu about a decision by Pakistan to abstain from a United Nations resolution condemning Russia's role in the conflict, the US official said Prime Minister Khan has recently visited Moscow. And so I think we're trying to figure out how to engage specifically with the Prime Minister following that decision. The question that arises following this news report is whether Imran Khan stands vindicated today. It would appear that way, because ever since his ouster from the top office, Khan had been blaming the United States for influencing the no-confidence motion against him, which saw the involvement of Pakistan's all-powerful army as well as Khan's political rivals. In one address to the nation after another, in one political rally after another, Imran Khan stuck to his guns, minced no words, and launched all-out blistering attacks on his political opponents, labeling them traitors and stooges of the United States. In fact, he repeatedly raked up this particular cipher and accused the US of plotting a conspiracy to topple his government. In one of his many interviews following his exit from office, Imran Khan said, the cipher is a reality. It was an official meeting that initiated conversation on both sides between Donald Lu, the Under-Secretary of State for South Asia, and the Pakistan ambassador, and this was brought to the notice of the National Security Committee and the Cabinet. At many rallies, Khan, while angrily referring to the United States, asked, are we your slaves? What do you think of us? That we are your slaves and we will do whatever you ask of us? The US, for its part, has always denied that it had anything to do with Imran Khan's ouster. The meeting between the Pakistan ambassador to the US and these two State Department officials has, of course, been the subject of intense scrutiny and controversy in Pakistan over the past year and a half as supporters of Khan and his military and civilian opponents jockeyed for power. The political struggle escalated on the 5th of August when Imran Khan was jailed, sentenced to 3 years in prison on corruption charges and effectively barred from active politics for 5 years. That, of course, means that he stands virtually eliminated from the upcoming general election. Khan and his supporters dismissed these charges as baseless and politically motivated.
हुआ ये कि हमारा अमेरिका में जो एम्बेसडर था उसकी एक मुलाकात हुई अमेरिकन ऑफिशियल के साथ। अब अमेरिकन ऑफिशियल जो था उसकी बस सिर्फ मैं थोड़ी सी बात आपको बताता हूँ। उसने कहा क्या, उसने पहले कहा कि जी इमरान खान को रूस नहीं जाना चाहिए। वो बड़ा उसने कोशिश की एम्बेसडर ने बताने के लिए कि उसकी वजह कंसेंसस था, पहले से प्लान बना हुआ था, लेकिन उसने कहा नहीं, सिर्फ इमरान खान ने फैसला किया। फिर वो जो कहता, और मैं ये चाहता हूँ आप कौन जरा गौर से मेरी बात सुने कि उसने कहा क्या। उसने कहा कि अगर आप इमरान खान को ये, और उसने कहा अभी अदम एतमाद दर्ज नहीं हुआ था पाकिस्तान में, उससे पहले ये कह रहा है, यानी इसे पता था कि अदम एतमाद आने वाली है। कहता कि अगर इमरान खान इसमें से बच जाता है अदम एतमाद से, तो पाकिस्तान को बड़ा मुश्किल यानी कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस फेस करने पड़ेंगे। तकब्बर देखें कि अगर इमरान खान यानी सिटिंग प्राइम मिनिस्टर अगर वो नहीं हटता इसमें से तो पाकिस्तान को नुकसान होगा। और फिर कहता लेकिन अगर वो हार जाता है तो पाकिस्तान को माफ कर दिया जाएगा। यानी ये भी नहीं उसने कहा कि अगर वो नहीं आता तो जो भी दूसरा आएगा पहले हम देखेंगे वो क्या कर रहा है, फिर हम उसको माफ करेंगे। उसने कहा जो भी आएगा माफ कर देगा, यानी कि उसको पता था कि किसने आने, किसने अचकन सलवाई हुई है, कौन तैयारी में बैठा हुआ, उसे सब पता था, तो उसको माफ कर देंगे।
All right, let's now go across to Ramakrishnan Sridharan, consulting editor with News 9, who joins us live from Washington, D.C. Good evening, or shall I say good morning, Shri. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Neha. Good evening to you.
You know, talking about this particular cable, I mean, it's obviously caused quite a flutter, this entire story, by the Intercept. You know, my guess is if Imran Khan wasn't behind bars, following this story, he would have been out on the streets with his supporters today. The question really is this really not a vindication for Imran Khan, given that from day one, the man insisted that this was a quote-unquote conspiracy by the United States of America to topple his government? And also, if what the story says about these so-called classified secret cables is indeed true, what does it really say about the interference by the United States in other countries' domestic affairs?
Right. So let me start off by saying two things, Neha, pointing out two things in this story. One, even Intercept has not said that it has been able to independently verify the authenticity of the cable. But let's assume that what's in the cable is true, because we know this has been a very big issue in Pakistan with Imran's party in Pakistan in particular for the last 1.5 years now almost. In fact, ever since the meeting happened, because the US ambassador to Pakistan was also called, and then Pakistan lodged its protest when Prime Minister Imran Khan was still the Prime Minister. So we know that there may be some truth definitely in this, but the US has denied very categorically, the State Department yesterday has denied very categorically that it has had any role to play in ousting or instigating the removal of Imran Khan as the Prime Minister of Pakistan. But now let's look at what could be the the diplomatic play. All that aside, what could be the reasons why US was unhappy with Pakistan and in fact the way Imran Khan was leading the country? To my mind, there are two major issues. One was, of course, that the Russia issue, if you remember, when the meeting happened, Russia had just launched its war on Ukraine. And at that point, US and other Western countries needed global opinion to be rallied against Russia, and for countries to make their position clear on where they stand on this war between Russia and Ukraine. That is number one. Second, I think the most important thing was how Imran Khan was pushing his administration closer to Taliban, which was the government in Afghanistan. So this was not acceptable to US. In fact, it should not be acceptable to anyone, including India, because as we know, Taliban has terrorist roots. It is built on violence, and that is something which every country, including US and India, they've been fighting terrorists in that particular region. So now, if Imran Khan, as the Prime Minister of Pakistan, is going to make changes in Pakistan's foreign policy after having got billions and billions of dollars in aid from the US over several years, on the pretext of fighting terrorism, on keeping the region stable, at least on paper, and then making moves which actually make the region even more unstable and creating chaos in the region. Obviously, I think there are going to be consequences, and these are global, chess moves, just geopolitical chess moves. And unfortunately, that's how the pieces fell in the case of Imran Khan, Neha.
Well, certainly, like I said, Imran Khan would feel vindicated today, but he, of course, is behind bars currently, and the way things currently stand, it looks like he will not even be able to contest the upcoming elections in Pakistan. Thanks for that, Shri. We're coming back to you in just a moment. Let's now turn our attention to a story that in fact emanates from the United States itself. Amid already strained ties between the US and China, President Joe Biden has signed an executive order that will prohibit some new US investments in China in sensitive technologies like computer chips and require government notification in other tech sectors. The long-awaited order authorizes the US Treasury Secretary to prohibit or restrict US investments in Chinese entities in 3 sectors: semiconductors and microelectronics, quantum information technologies, and certain artificial intelligence systems. The order is aimed at preventing American capital and expertise from helping China develop technologies that could support its military modernization and undermine US national security. The measure targets private equity, venture capital, joint ventures and greenfield investments. Biden, in a letter to the US Congress, said he was declaring a national emergency to deal with the threat of advancement by countries like China in sensitive technologies and products critical to the military, intelligence, surveillance or cyber-enabled capabilities. China reacted, saying it is gravely concerned about this order and it reserves its right to take measures in accordance. A statement from the Chinese Commerce Ministry says the order affects normal operation and decision-making of enterprises and undermines the international economic and trade order. The ministry also said it hopes the US will respect the laws of the market economy and the principle of fair competition and refrain from artificially hindering global economic and trade exchanges and cooperation or set up obstacles for the recovery of the world economy. Fact is, there is a major economic war underway in the space of semiconductors. Biden's proposal focuses on investments in Chinese companies developing software to design computer chips and tools to manufacture them. The US, Japan and the Netherlands dominate those fields, and the Chinese government has been working to build homegrown alternatives. The White House said Biden consulted allies on the plan and incorporated feedback from the group of 7 nations. Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer said, "For too long, American money has helped fuel the Chinese military's rise. Today, the United States is taking a strategic first step to ensure American investment does not go to fund Chinese military advancements. The regulations will only impact future investments, not existing ones, but it may ask for disclosure of prior transactions. The move could fuel further tensions between the world's 2 largest economies." The Chinese embassy in Washington said it was very disappointed by the measure. US officials insist the prohibitions were intended to address the most acute national security risks and not to separate the 2 countries' highly interdependent economies. The Republicans said the order was rife with loopholes, such as only applying to future investment and not aggressive enough. The Treasury said certain transactions, including potentially those in publicly traded instruments and intra-company transfers from US parents to subsidiaries, could be exempted. Now, the Chinese tech industry, once a magnet for US venture capital, has already seen a drastic decline in US investment amid intensifying geopolitical tensions. Last year, total US-based venture capital investment in China plummeted to $9.7 billion from $32.9 billion in 2021. This year so far, US venture capitalist investors only put $1.2 billion into Chinese tech startups. A spokesperson for the Chinese embassy in Washington said the White House had not heeded China's repeated expression of deep concerns about the plan. The spokesperson said more than 70,000 US companies do business in China. The restrictions will hurt both Chinese and American businesses, interfere with normal cooperation and reduce investor confidence in the US. The Semiconductor Industry Association said it hopes the order will enable US chip firms to compete on a level playing field and access key global markets, including China. Well, to understand what this move really means, let's now go back to Shri. Shri, of course, the Biden administration insists this is all about national security. But we also know that there is this ongoing economic war between these two giants, especially in the space of semiconductors. Well, the semiconductor industry in America is happy with this decision. The Republicans say that the move is not aggressive enough. And then, of course, you have China, which has not only expressed a strong displeasure, but hinted at retaliatory measures. And we have seen tit-for-tat measures being announced by the two countries for a while now. So is it almost certain now that this is likely to further strain already strained ties between the United States and China? And what really is America's end game here? What are they playing at?
Right. So I would describe this as a silicon blockade, Neha. This is meant to arrest China's march technologically. And a lot of the recent technology that China has taken from the US has gone into its military technology. So this is not just an economic hit, but it's also meant to stop China's rise as a military power around the world. But let me just backtrack a little bit and also talk about last year's October 7th export trade ban, which actually was the starting point in some sense of significant moves in arresting China's ability to acquire high-end technology. So those export restrictions have now been coupled by a complementary set of directions which prohibit venture capital, private equity industry from investing directly in high-tech industry in China, which specifically includes artificial intelligence companies and semiconductor. Now, it's a well-known fact that the US for a long time has already prohibited American companies from supplying directly to any company that helps China build its military weapons and military technology. But what has happened is, over the years, the administration has seen that there are loopholes. So many of the companies which are actually helping China indirectly and the People's Liberation Army, the military directly, specifically, they're actually not on the short list. So they were escaping in the guise of being small startups, but they were all working with in China's military. So this is a direct move which makes sure that no money or no talent or any other connections go into in China's military buildup or even in the technological buildup that the China is very keen on, getting on a par with the US. So this is going to make it very difficult for China. Let me explain why I say that this is going to probably arrest China's technological march. Let's look at Huawei. Huawei was a company which was incubated within the PLA, and it was literally funded by PLA and made big by PLA. At one point, Huawei became the world's largest seller of smartphones. But after US made it difficult for banned sale of Huawei phones and equipment in the US and made it difficult for Huawei to access high-end technology, high-end chips, Huawei has now just got 2% share of smartphones. In fact, they've sold their smartphone brand. So anyone who thinks that this is not going to cripple China's advance as a high technology country is mistaken. This is going to be a big blow to China's tech aspirations, Neha.
Very interesting. We'll have to wait and see how China retaliates. But of course, the Huawei example is a very relevant one because it seemed to be unstoppable at one point in time. But given the tough stance that the United States took, it's now an international pariah, with country after country keeping it at bay, citing security concerns. All right, coming back to you in just a moment to discuss our next story, Shri. The next story is also from the United States. A man from Utah who was accused of making threats against US President Joe Biden was shot and killed by FBI agents hours before Biden was expected to land in the state on Wednesday. Special agents were trying to serve a warrant on the home of Craig Robertson in Provo, south of Salt Lake City, when the shooting happened, according to the FBI. Court documents allege Robertson referenced a presidential assassination. They also allege threats against Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg, Attorney General Merrick Garland, and New York Attorney General Letitia James. On Monday, Robertson posted online that he had heard Biden was coming to Utah and he was planning to dig out a camouflage suit and clean the dust off the M24 sniper rifle. In another post, Robertson refers to himself as a MAGA Trumper, a reference to the former US President Donald Trump's Make America Great Again slogan. The posts indicated he did appear to own a long-range sniper rifle and numerous other weapons, as well as camouflage gear known as a ghillie suit, investigators said in court documents. Another post by Robertson reads, "In my dream, I see Joe Biden's body in a dark corner of a DC parking garage with his head severed and lying in a huge puddle of blood. Hoorah!" Robertson was charged with 3 felony counts, including making threats against the president. Authorities say he wrote in a September 2022 Facebook post, and I quote, "The time is right for a presidential assassination or two. First Joe, then Kamala." Robertson allegedly wrote in October 2022, "Merrick Garland, the demented weasel, I am 100% anti-abortion. Why are your FBI cowards not kicking on my door? Know this, they will die." Now, FBI's Utah office spokesperson Sandra Barker said the FBI takes all shooting incidents involving our agents or task force members seriously. In accordance with the FBI policy, the shooting incident is under review by the FBI's inspection division. Now, as this is an ongoing matter, we have no further details to provide. Robertson also posted online threats in recent months against other Democratic politicians and prosecutors who've brought cases against Donald Trump. The case comes amid heightened vitriol aimed at national and local leaders in the lead up to the 2024 presidential election, and what FBI Director Christopher Wray has called an unprecedented level of threats against even FBI agents. In a post on Monday, Robertson said, "Hey FBI, you still monitoring my social media? Checking so I can be sure to have a loaded gun handy in case you drop by again." When FBI agents approached Robertson at his house in March about a social media post, Robertson would not speak to the agent, saying, "I said it was a dream and we're done here. Don't return without a warrant." After the interaction, Robertson allegedly repeatedly threatened FBI agents online. One such Facebook post included in court documents said, "To my friends in the Federal Bureau of Idiots, I know you're reading this and you have no idea how close your agents came to bang." Now, Wednesday's incident comes amid a rise in political violence across the United States over the years, a threat which experts warn endangers the health of American democracy. In a report released by the Public Religion Research Institute and Brookings Institution in February this year, researchers found that 12% of the people who supported political violence indicated that they have personally threatened to use or actually used a gun, knife, or some other weapon on someone in the past few years. There have also been other incidents of those threatening political figures with violence in recent months. In January, a dual citizen of France and Canada pleaded guilty to mailing ricin to Donald Trump. Meanwhile, in June, a New Hampshire man was arrested and charged with threatening to kill an unnamed US senator. According to a recent University of Chicago survey, last month, the number of Americans who believe the use of force is justified to restore Trump as president increased by 6 million in the last few months to an estimated 18 million people. Okay, Shri, I don't even know how to react to those staggering figures. Frankly, my head is spinning. apart from the fact that the FBI believe that there could very well have been an assassination attempt on the President of the United States of America, and they believe that this man was a clear and present danger. He has now been shot and killed. But you know, the kind of spike that we've seen in political violence in the United States, all the, studies that I've just quoted, that paints a terrifying picture. And perhaps some would argue that, a majority of these cases have happened since 2016, since the time when Trump actually came to office.
Well, Neha, that's what the data seems to suggest, and I have no reason to dispute the data, given that it's been done by a credible organization. So there has been a greater polarization of political views in the US. Voters are more polarized, and there are economic stresses which have built the American dream, which was accessible to anyone, with a high school degree. That dream has been fading for a lot of Americans. So there is a lot of angst, and the divides are getting sharper along political, along economic lines. So this is unfortunate, Neha, that's happening in the US. But in this specific case of Robertson, I think the action that FBI took is probably the correct one, because Robertson had been making threats on social media, and FBI had previously met him as well. And even this time, when the incident happened, they'd actually gone to serve a warrant for his arrest. So now this is a gentleman who did not, think twice before actually dusting off his gun, as he wrote, and use on the agents who came to his house. So there's a strong possibility that it may have motivated him to probably go ahead and at least attempt some sort of an assassination attempt on the life of President Biden. So that's not something to be taken lightly. But this is unfortunate. This is, I think, a reflective of the difficult times that the US is going through politically and socially and economically. So this is something I hope is just not a incident that becomes a mainstream. But the fact remains that ever since 2016 elections, things have become far more polarized in the US, Neha.
Perhaps that would be an understatement. And I was just wondering, as we wrap up this discussion, Sri, what are we to make of the fact that there could be as many as 18 million people in the United States who think it is all right to use guns to bring Trump back to power, to make him president again? I mean, is that how they're hoping to make America great again? I mean, this is a country that is supposed to be a paragon of all democratic virtues.
So, Neha, we did see violence erupt on the Capitol, which is the seat of power here in Washington, D.C., in the U.S. And there were some people who definitely were willing to take things into their own hands to keep Mr. Trump in power. But ultimately, I think the judicial system, the political system here in the U.S. is strong enough to deal with these fringe elements in the society. So I don't think this is going to become something mainstream. Well, yes, there are some people who don't think twice before resorting to violence. But I think by and large, America is still a very peaceful country, and it's driven by law and very strong judicial system. And that's really the hope, and the Constitution, which everyone abides by. I think that's the real strength of America as a country. And I hope this fringe element is contained and not allowed to become bigger than what it is today.
I don't dispute what you're saying. I mean, clearly American institutions are still quite robust, but I'm pretty sure you'd agree that perhaps no American could have ever envisaged what happened on the Capitol Hill on 6th January 2021. Well, let's certainly hope that we don't see more political violence in the run-up to next year's fascinating presidential election. It's already shaping up quite interestingly. On that note, Sri, thank you so much for joining us from DC and sharing your perspective with those big stories.
My pleasure, Neha. Thank you.
All right. On that note, let's slip into a quick break here on Global Lens. Don't go anywhere. There's more on the other side.
My India, My Life Goals campaign, a joint initiative by TV9 Network and Union Ministry of Culture, has been mainstreaming lifestyle for environment, that is life, an idea floated by our Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi.